Wednesday, Sundays, catch the ride. Football hoops, we break it wide. Stats and facts, truth on high. SWAT talk with the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Hit the corner of the field, we strategize. Breaking the game down, no disguise. Play by play, we analyze. Eyewear sharp, we magnify. SWAT talk with the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Wednesdays heat, Sundays ignite. We talking legends shining bright. Back and forth, day or night. This the plug, we bring the light. SWAT talk with the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Cats pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Wednesdays heat, Sundays ignite. We talking legends shining bright. Back and forth, day or night. This the plug, we bring the light. SWAT talk when the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Cats pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel.
All right, everybody, what's going on, man? How y'all doing? Welcome to today's edition of Swag Talk, the show we cover the swag inside and out. Of course, I am your tour guide around the swag. C Wells coming at you, and we are going to recap week 11, man. We are only 2 full weeks left into the season, 2 full weeks left in the season. So, championship races are heating up. Excuse me, championship races are heating up. So, we are in championship November. And in the next week or so, we probably will know who is going to play in the swag championship game, barring anything crazy happening. So we're going to enjoy this last couple weeks. And this week was honestly, it was almost blowout week. Most games, I think every game except for 2 were double-digit victories for one team. So there were a lot of comfortable wins here. There were 2 close games, and so we'll talk about everything, and we'll move on from now. So don't forget, tomorrow I'm planning on dropping my basketball preview. Hopefully I can get it finished up and out tomorrow. And Wednesday will be our week 12 preview. Might go live again Saturday night. Not sure yet, but might go live again. And then Sunday will be our week 12 preview. And if there's still any intrigue in the championship races, I might drop a championship scenario video depending on what happens on Saturday. So that's our upcoming schedule. Don't forget to like the video, comment, and subscribe. We almost to 1,500. We almost to 1,500 subs. So if y'all would be so kind and hit that subscription button to get us over that point, that's been a goal of mine. So if we can achieve that goal, man, I thank y'all very much. So let's go ahead and get into this. First and foremost, shout out to all the winners. And with that being said, Alcorn got them a 35-17 victory over Southern. If you seen one Southern game at this point this season, you probably seen them all. They pretty much all follow the same formula, minus a difference here and there. A decent offensive drive early in the game. Then the floodgates open on defense, and offense just doesn't do much. Special teams throws in some mistakes, and that's a Southern game in 2025. And this game was basically the same. So not a lot different there. Alcorn, they did what they needed to do. They took advantage of Southern mistakes, and they were able to have a 21-point third quarter, which really was the difference in this game. This game was a 14-10 game at the half. Before special teams mistakes by Southern led to Alcorn being able to score 2 touchdowns. After a Southern pick 6, the Braves went on their longest scoring drive of the night and got the touchdown to extend the lead back out to 18. So looking at the scoring, with 5:14 left in the first quarter, Trey Holly had a 2-yard run for Southern. extra point good, 7-0. Alcorn would get a 1 yard touchdown off of a fumble in the end zone, and so they would tie the game up at 7. With 4:23 left in the first half, Jarvis Rush will have a 4 yard touchdown, extra point good. Braves 14-7, and then with time running out in the first half, Nathan Zimmer kicks a 42-yard field goal for Southern. Halftime score 14-10. After a Southern fumble, Alcorn would get the ball and they would go 9 plays, 42 yards, taking 2:40 off the clock when Jalen Tolbert had a 7 yard touchdown run. Also, after a bad punt by Southern, Amarion Blakes would catch an 18-yard pass from Tolbert that kept a 3-play, 30-yard drive. It only took 52 seconds off the clock. At that point, Braves were 28-10. Southern would get a pick 6 and make the score 35-17 before Alcorn went on that 77-yard drive to make the score 35-17 after a Tylon Citizen 5-yard pass from Jalen Tolbert. And that's basically this game. Alcorn finished with 23 first down, Southern 11. Southern 74 yards on the ground, 28 carries, 2.6 yards per carry, 1 touchdown. Alcorn 259 on the ground, 48 carries, 5.4 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. 183 through the air for Southern, 15 of 34. No touchdown, no interceptions. Alcorn 119 through the air, 12 of 22. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. 257 yards of offense for Southern. As my cat runs across the screen. 62 plays, 4.1 yard per play. They had 2 fumbles and lost 1. They had 9 penalties for 62 yards. 378 total offense for Alcorn, 70 plays, 5.4 yards per play. They fumbled 3 times but didn't lose any. They had 7 penalties for 65 yards. Southern punted for a 33.2 yard average, Alcorn 44.8. Southern 30-minute 10-second time possession, 5 of 17 on third downs, 1 of 3 on fourth down, 1 on 1 in the red zone. They had 1 sack. They made all 3 of their kicks, 2 extra points and 1 field goal. Alcorn 27-10 time of possession, 5 of 13 on third down, 1 for 1 on fourth down, 5 of 5 in the red zone. And they also had 1 sack, and they made all 5 of their extra points, did not attempt a field goal. Individually, Southern was led by Ashton Strother, going 14 of 31 for 168 yards, no touchdown, no interception, no sacks. Tolbert, 12 for 22 for Alcorn, 119, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 1 sack. Asbury and Remo led Southern with 24 yards apiece on the ground. Reggie Davis, 17 for 110 for Alcorn, averaged 6.5 yards per carry, so he had a really good game on the ground, a consistent game, and that helps this offense as they were able to get 43 yards from Carl McDonald, 41 yards from Tolbert, and 37 yards from Stewart. Also, Rush chipped in 28 yards, so they had a really good running attack. Yesterday, they ran the ball quite frequently with a lot of people, and they were able to get it done. Darren Morris, 5 catches, 81 yards for Southern. Warren, 2 for 35 to lead the Braves. Southern was led in tackles by Jamarlo Campbell with 11. He also had 1.5 sacks. He also had half a tackle for loss. Givens led the team with 1.5 tackle for loss. Sacks were by Walker. He had 1 sack. Interceptions went to Campbell and Carter. And Alcorn was led in tackles by Cedric Roberts. He also was one of 3 people with a tackle for loss, along with Eric Thomas and Christopher Wiley. And Thomas had the sack. So, like I say, this was just another. If you're a Southern fan, this was just another in a long line of frustrating games. There's 8 straight in a row. L's. There's obviously a school record, and I honestly don't see much changing here. If y'all Alcorn, you're stacking up some wins. You know, you finally putting some things together. Your quarterback play has gotten better. Your running game has been what it's always been, and your defense is making better plays. And you're out. You're kind of too far out to worry about the division, but finishing strong is still a good possibility. And to me, that's at a certain point, to me, that's what's important. is finishing strong, and they put themselves in position to finish strong and move on to the final two games of the season. Next up, we have Jackson State taking on Mississippi Valley. Tigers win 42-3. This was a game that typical Jackson Valley game. Valley play hard for a while, keep the game close for a little while before the floodgates open up, and really this was a game that Jackson State was able to do what they needed to do, get in, get out, and move on. So didn't waste a lot of time, didn't let Valley hang around, didn't let them get an early touchdown and make it interesting. They just came out and did what they needed to do. 21 points in the first half, 21 in the second half. So balanced scoring there. 7 points first quarter, 14 second, 14 third, and 7 in the fourth. Again, that's just a balanced game as they were able to just make things happen. Denario Davenport got the Tigers on the board first with a 2-yard run from for a touchdown. Tigers up 7-0 at the extra point. 6:16 was in the first quarter. Then in the second quarter, with 6:15 left, Travis Terrell will get a 4-yard run for Jackson State. Travis Terrell 4-yard run, extra point good, 14-0. 20 seconds left in the second quarter. Nate Rembert, 9-yard pass from Lockhart. Tigers go up 21-0. And then Valley will get a Marco Javicic 42-yard field goal as time expires. In the first half, they made it score 21-3. That would be our halftime score. After that, Jackson State 3 more touchdowns. Rembert and Lockhart hook up again, this time from 14 yards out. Extra point good, 28-3. Mike Smith, 60-yard pick six for Jackson State, 35-3 after the extra point. That came with 3:05 left in the third. And then with 8:14 left in the game, Dupree, 22-yard run, extra point good, 42-3. Tigers finished this game with 29 first downs, Valley 13, 217 on the ground for Jackson State, 45 carries, 4.8 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. Valley 53 yards on 28 carries, 1.9 yard per carry, no touchdown. So Jackson State defense played a really good game, a dominant game. Held the Devils to 126 yards through the air, 15 of 35, no touchdown, 1 interception. 241 through the air for Jackson State, 21 of 27, really efficient passing game now. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 458 total yards for the Tigers, 72 plays, 6.4 yards per play. They did lose the only fumble they had, and they had 4 penalties for 44 yards. And if you're a Jackson State fan, that 4 penalties for 44 yards is probably the best number that you have in this game that you should be proud of, besides that 42 and that 3. Because penalties have been a bugaboo for these guys, and to have a blowout game when you only have 4 penalties is definitely your guys were locked in. Because a lot of times in games like this, you get those penalties. Guys, especially once you start mixing in guys, you start to get penalties. But this was a very clean game for Jackson State, minus the 1 fumble, and that's what you want in a game like this. Don't need to give these guys any opportunities to hang around. 179 yards of offense for Valley on 63 plays, 2.8 yards per carry, mental per play. They had 3 fumbles and they lost 1, and they had 6 penalties for 70 yards. Jackson State punted 4 times for a 38-yard average. Valley 8 for 50. 31-30 time possession for the Tigers, 5 of 11 on third down, 1-on-1 on fourth down. So that's a pretty solid game. Basically, you were 6 for 12 on conversions, 50% on the night if you add up third and fourth down. So that's a really good night there. 4 of 6 in the red zone, 1 sack, 6 of 6 on extra points. They did miss a field goal, so they had another opportunity to add 3 points. Came up short there. 28-30 time possession for Valley, 3 of 14 on third down, 1 or 2 on fourth down. They didn't get in the red zone. They had 1 sack, and they made their only field goal with no extra points attempted. Tigers were led by Jared Lockhart, 21 of 27, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was sacked once. Brandon Nunez went the distance for Valley in this game. He went 15 of 34 for 126 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. He was sacked once. Miller led Jackson State with 87 yards on the night. Also, Terrell had 56. Davenport had 29, Lockhart 23, and Dupree 22. So pretty balanced rushing attack there for the Tigers. Their primary ball carriers all had at least 7 carries. So they got a lot of work for those guys. Norman Taylor led Valley with 32 yards on 6 carries. Rembert, 6 for 97 in his return to Valley and 2 touchdowns. White led Valley with 3 catches for 51 yards. Reed Pulliam led Jackson State with 7 tackles. Quincy Ivory had 1.5 tackle for loss. He also had a half a sack along with Jalen Ware. Interception was by Smith, returning for a touchdown. Prince Eojoma led Valley with 6 tackles. Triplet, Warren, and Grant each had a tackle for loss apiece. Triplet had the sack for Valley. And that's that, man. Like I said, this is the kind of, these are the kind of games you want in this situation. I look at them as, they're by the book, so they're not exactly exciting for you, but that's what you want in these kind of games. You don't need any extra excitement in these games. You want a boring game here. You want these guys to knock them out the box and play clean, and that's what Jackson State did. They knocked Valley out the box. They played clean, and they got a big victory, and now they move on to their next opponent. Next up, we have Alabama A&M and Prairie View. This was honestly a tale of 2 halves, or a tale of 29 minutes and then a tale of 31 minutes. This was an ugly game from the start. Prairie View really couldn't get anything going early. A&M was able to get 5 points in the first half, and actually they led 5-0 by the early portion of the second quarter before Prairie View got on the board. This was a 7-5 game. This was a 7-5 game at one point, right before like 5 minutes left in that first half. Prairie View led 7-5. A&M, got to stop. Had a chance to either, run the half out and go in down 7-5, or get in the field goal range and possibly go into the half up 8-7, or still down 7-5. But going in with some momentum regardless. They had I want to see if I can find the down and distance, but they had a third down that came up late in that half that really kind of set the wheels in motion for them to basically come up short. So just looking at that drive that they had right before the half, they got the ball on their own 35 with 1 minute and 3 seconds left. They would get the ball down to the Prairie View 47, and they had a 3rd and 2. At the 47, 3rd and 2, they threw a pass from Hanley to Miles Parker at the 43, which would have given them a first down. He drops it. Going out, he drops it. I don't know if he was trying to focus on staying in bounds and didn't catch it, or he just just didn't complete it. But incomplete there. They end up punting, which in most situations, it's fine. Prairie View get the ball basically at the 2, but really deep in their own end. And so you thinking Prairie View 33 seconds, 98 yards away from the end zone, you can get out of this still. Prairie View puts together a nice drive. They get 1 yard on first down on a quarterback sneak from Peters. Then this says McDowell, but the game said it was Bingman. But either way it go, Prairie View get a 29-yard run. So they got out of the shadow of their goal line out to their 32. And then Peters will get a 15-yard pass to Josiah Rockwell to get them down to the 45. So that they're still in decent position. On the ensuing first down, Peters would hit Rockwell again to the A&M 39 for 14 yards. And at this point, you're really looking at like the TV guys were saying, it's not a lot of time left. You're probably gonna go ahead and run a play and then kick the field goal. But Peters hit Rockwell for 39 yards for a touchdown. Couple of A&M defenders were there, and they just couldn't make the play. Rockwell made a hell of a catch in the end zone. Extra point was no good, but you go into the half down. If you're A&M, you go into the half now down 13-5, and all your momentum that you had is zapped because Prairie View comes out of the half with another drive, going 7 plays and 71 yards, took 3:05 off the clock. They would get another Peters to Rockwell pass, this time from 27 yards out. Extra point good. They go up 20-5. That connection will hook up again with 1:16 left in the third. This time from 9 yards out, 27-5, and game is basically out of reach at this point because A&M's offense has not done anything. Prairie View would tack on more scores. They would get a Andre Dennis 18-yard run to make the score 34-5. They would get a Fitzgerald pass from Peters for 56 yards out. Extra point good, 41-5. And then they would get a Shadrick Bird touchdown run from 1 yard out to make the final score 48-5. So this, like I said, this was a game that, it was ugly early, and it looked like, maybe A&M could kind of ugly this game up and find a way to, keep Prairie View locked down. And, that score right before the half just changed everything. And from then on, Prairie View was off to the races. A&M just never really could get anything going. And you end up with a 48-5 blowout instead of a whatever closer game. 27 first downs for the Panthers, 15 for the Bulldogs, 213 on the ground for Prairie View, 38 carries, 5.6 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. 103 on the ground for A&M, 33 carries, 3.1 yard per carry, no touchdowns. 394 through the air for Prairie View, 17 of 23, 5 touchdowns. They did have 1 interception. 101 through the air for Alabama A&M, 18 of 39. No touchdowns, no interceptions. 607 total offense for Prairie View, over 600 yards, 61 plays. They averaged 10 yards a play. This offense was on fire in the second half. You're averaging a first down every time you move the ball. That's a dominant effort there. 2 fumbles, they didn't lose either. They had 7 penalties for 60 yards. 204 yards of offense for Alabama A&M, 72 plays, 2.8 yards per play. They had 3 fumbles and didn't lose either. They had 5 penalties for 52 yards. Prairie View punted twice for a 38.5 yard average. A&M punted 11 times for a 43.6 yard average. 26-minute, 55-second time possession for the Panthers, 5 of 9 on third downs, 0 for 1 on fourth down. They were 3 of 3 in the red zone, no sacks. They were 6 of 7 on extra points, missed their only field goal, so they did miss 2 kicks. Had opportunity for 4 more points, but came up short there. 33-05 time of possession for the Bulldogs, 7 of 21 on third down. You have 21 third downs, man. That's ridiculous. 1 of 1 on fourth downs, 1 of 1 in the red zone. They did have 1 sack. They did not attempt the extra point, and they made their only field goal. Peters, 17 of 22, really efficient game there. 394, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks. Hanley, 18 of 36, 101 yards, no touchdown, no interception, no sacks. Bird, big game for him. 11 carries, 75 yards, and a touchdown. Isaiah Nono, 62 yards on 5 carries. Rockwell, big game for him. 8 catches, 183 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That could be player of the week numbers. Huge game there. Elijah Lucky, 2 catches, 21 yards to lead the Bulldogs. Daryl Starling led Prairie View with 8 tackles along with Trinity Ward. They both had 8 tackles. Malik Gukake, He had a tackle for loss along with Trevor Randall. They both had tackles for loss to lead the team, no sacks. Um, Alabama A&M was led, or they did. Alabama A&M was led in tackles by Robert Iverson. Also, tackle for loss went to Petway, Smallwood, and Tibbs. They each had one apiece. Petway had a sack. Interception went to Wyatt Wright. And like I said, this was just one of those games, man, where it was basically, you know, tell of two halves. Even that late touchdown at the half, if you have any kind of offense coming out of it and your defense gets that stop out of half, you're looking at a different game. But with your offense struggling, your defense really needed to carry the weight, and they kind of did it for a half, but they couldn't do it in the second half. And Prairie View's offense caught fire, and they really were able to run away with that game. So big win for Prairie View. They bounced back from that loss last week, which is kind of what you want to see in these situations. You want to see how our team responds, and they did a good job there responding to that loss and getting a big blowout victory. Next up, we have FAMU going to Pine Bluff and getting a 31-28 victory. This game was early. It looked like Pine Bluff was going to be in control. FAMU took control in terms of the score about midway second quarter, and then they jumped up to a 10-point lead, and Pine Bluff couldn't really chop it down more than 3 points. As they would chop it down to 3, and FAMU would score again. And then Pine Bluff scored a late touchdown to make the score closer than probably what it is. This is basically a 10-point game before Pine Bluff scored that late touchdown with 24 seconds to make it a 3-point margin. So Pine Bluff got the scoring started with a 33-yard pass from Peters to Robinson. Extra point good. That was with 4:32 left in the first. Then FAMU would run off 17 straight points between the second quarter and the start of the third quarter. They started off with Daniel Porto 47-yard field goal. They trailed 7-3. Jordan Edwards 15-yard pass from R.J. Johnson. Extra point good. Rattlers would take a 10-7 lead with 6:33 left in the first half, and that would be our halftime score. With 7:46 left in the third, the Rattlers would get a 42-yard Goldie Lawrence touchdown from R.J. Johnson. That capped a 12-play, 87-yard drive that took 7:07 off the clock. And at that point, FAMU's up 10, and you're feeling like, they're going to go ahead and knock this thing out the box. But DJ Stevenson hits Jalen Jennings for 12 yards and a touchdown with 10:22 left in the fourth. That capped a 10-play, 69-yard drive that took 6 minutes off the clock. That capped the 8-play, 80-yard drive that took 3:24 off the clock. And then FAMU would answer with that 10-play, 69-yard drive that took 6 minutes off the clock when Jamal Haley had a 28-yard touchdown run, and that would make the score 24-14. Pine Bluff would answer when Pine Bluff would answer with a touchdown from 31 yards out with 2:43 left in the game, 24-21 at that point. Thad Franklin would get a 47-yard touchdown run for the Rattlers with 1:46 left in the game, and that would put FAMU up 31-21 before Pine Bluff went on one last drive and got a Jackson Isaac 1-yard pass from Christian Peters to make the score 28-31. And that would be our final score as the Golden Lions couldn't get the ball back. 21 first downs for FAMU, 23 for Pine Bluff, 207 on the ground for the Rattlers, 38 carries, 5.4 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns, 95 yards on the ground for Pine Bluff, 28 carries, 3.4 yards per carry, no touchdowns, 235 through the air for FAMU, 17 of 25, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 345 through the air for Pine Bluff, 27 of 38, no 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Total yardage basically even, 441 for FAMU, 440 for Pine Bluff, 63 plays for FAMU, 66 plays for Pine Bluff, 7 yards per play for the Rattlers, 6.7 for the Golden Lions. Neither team had a fumble, and 8 penalties for 79 yards for FAMU, 7 for 55 for the Golden Lions. Both teams punted twice. FAMU averaged 52 yards per punt, Pine Bluff 51.5. This game was honestly pretty even when you look at it. 33-minute time possession for the Rattlers, 7-13 on third downs, 3-3 on fourth downs, 1-2 in the red zone. They had 2 sacks. They were 4-4 on extra points and 1-1 on field goals. They did have an interception in the end zone, which probably would have given them some points. That was the only turnover of the game, so they did have opportunity to maybe extend that lead more before they turned it over. 26-55 time possession for the Golden Lions, 9-14 on third down, 0 for 3 on fourth down. That's another difference in this game. 2 for 2 in the red zone. They had 1 sack and they were 4-4 on extra points. Did not attempt a field goal. Johnson, 17-25, 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 sack. Peters, 26-36, 333 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions this week. He was sacked twice. Stevenson, 1 for 1 for 12 yards and a touchdown. Franklin led the Rattlers with 26 carries for 122 yards and a touchdown. Jennings led the Golden Lions with 14 for 60. Goldie Lawrence had 5 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown for the Rattlers. DeAvery Robinson, 6 for 95 and a touchdown for the Golden Lions. Also, Brian Norris led FAMU with 7 tackles. He also had a tackle for loss along with Antonio Camon, Nayron Jenkins, Jalik Thomas, and Jacob Brown. They all had a tackle for loss apiece. And Amari Lee also had 1. Sack went to Camon and Norris. They each had 1 sack apiece. Pine Bluff was led in tackles by Denarius Hilliard with 15 tackles. Big game now for him. Really solid game there. 15 tackles. He also had a tackle for loss, along with Deron Moore, Jamarlin Green, and Christian Gamage. Sack went to Hilliard. Interception was by Kaylon Dupree. So this was a pretty close game, and this game was showed that Pine Bluff is at that point where they competing in games. They had opportunities, couldn't really capitalize. FAMU was up and down, but they played a solid game. They had a really good running attack in this game, and they got a much needed victory as they attempt to close out their season on a strong note. As they bounce back from their loss last week. This next game was a really interesting game because the score was higher than I thought it would be in the first half. Tate Southern was able to jump out on Bama State and take a 24-21 halftime lead. Second half was different. TSU had a couple scoring opportunities. They missed a field goal, and then they missed a field goal in the third quarter. Then they got 1 block, which Bama State returned for a touchdown to extend that lead out. Second half, Bama State kind of got things going a little bit more and were able to pull away with a 42-24 victory over the Texas Southern Tigers. Bama State got the scoring going first when Jalen Jones caught an 87-yard pass from Tayshawn Smoot. Extra point good, 7-0. That came with 10:48 left in the first quarter. Christian Avalar will get the Tigers on the board with a 50-yard field goal with 7:24 left in the game. The first quarter, 7-3. Tigers would get on top. With a 10-7 score after Cordell Rogers would catch a 12-yard pass from KJ Cooper with 2:20 left in the first. Nehemiah Hickson, 99-yard kickoff return for Bama State to answer that touchdown. Hornets up 14-10. Ethan Renfro with 11:08 left in the second quarter would get a 3-yard touchdown run, extra point good. They kept the 11-play, 80-yard drive that took 5:45 off the clock. Tigers led 17-14. Bama State would get the lead back with 6:52 left in the first half, when Marcus Harris would get a 13-yard touchdown run, 21-17 after the extra point. 1:53 left in the first half. Trenton Leary caught a 19-yard pass from Cooper, extra point good. That kept the 8-play, 85-yard drive that took 4:50 off the clock, 24-21, which would be our halftime score. Then Marcus Harris 3-yard run for Bama State early in the first half. Early in the second half, as they take the second half kickoff and drive. 3-yard run for Harris, his second of 3 touchdowns on the night, 28-24. And then they would extend that lead to 35-24 with a fourth quarter touchdown from Marcus Harris with 10:46 left in the game. Extra point good, 35-24. And then they would block a TSU field goal, and Tayshawn Sims will return it 75 yards for a touchdown. Extra point good, and that made the score 42-24, which was our final score. Tigers, like I said, they had a solid first half. Couldn't get it going in the second half. And that kind of did them in. Tigers 30 first downs to Bama State's 14. TSU 255 yards on the ground, 46 carries, 5.5 yards per carry, 1 touchdown. 118 on the ground for the Hornets, 22 carries, 5.4 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. 217 through the air for the Tigers, 26 to 37, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. 215 through the air for the Hornets, 9 of 13, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. 472 total offense for the Tigers, 83 plays, 5.7 yards per play, 1 fumble, didn't lose it. 8 penalties for 85 yards. They offense definitely, this whole team, when you look at it, this whole team had a game that they probably should have won it. But, when you can't score points in the second half and your opponent's scoring points, you're going to lose. Bama State made the most out of all their opportunities, and that basically is what helped them. 333 offensive total yards for the Hornets, 35 plays, 9.5 yards per play, no fumble. They had 4 penalties for 40 yards. TSU punted twice for a 37.5-yard average. Bama State 3 for 38. 42-minute and 8-second time of possession edge for TSU. 5 of 14 on third down, 1 or 2 on fourth down, 3 or 5 in the red zone. They had no sacks. They were 3 or 3 on extra points and 1 or 3 on field goals. 17:52 time of possession for the Hornets. This shows they were 0 for 4 on third down. So they won this game. Again, this is one of those rabbit out of the hat type games. Because if you took the score away and you just looked at the numbers, you would honestly think Bama State lost this game. But this is one of those games that proves that stats don't really mean a whole lot. It's just taking advantage of your opportunities, which they were 3 or 3 in the red zone. That helped. They did have 2 sacks as well, and they were 6 or 6 on all their kicks, which were all extra points. So TSU played a really good game, and especially in the first half. Second half, they had a couple drives but couldn't cash them in. Bama State did, and that's the difference in this game. Cooper 25 of 35, 220, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 2 sacks. Smoot 9 of 13, 215 yards, 1 touchdown, no interception, no sacks. Renfro had 18 carries for 145 yards, 1 touchdown. He continues to be an underrated guy in this league. Should be an all-SWAC candidate. He's had a really good season. Jamari Holtzclaw led the Hornets with 7 carries for 44 yards. Leary had 6 for 45 for the Tigers and a touchdown. Jones had 3 for 148 for the Hornets and a touchdown. Isaiah Bogarty led the Tigers with 5 tackles. Hardman had a tackle for loss to lead the team. No sacks and no interceptions. Bama State, they were led by, as I keep my cursor right, where is it? Bama State was led by DeAndre Morris. He had 10 tackles. Tackle for loss were by Patrick Smith, Jalen Jarrett, and King Lewis. Smith had a sack along with Jarrett. They both had sacks. And no interception. So, like I said, this game, was definitely one of those numbers is deceiving type of games, but a good win for Bama State as they played their first game without Andrew Body. They didn't really have the best effort, but in terms of numbers, but they did what they needed to do, and they put the important numbers on the board, which were those 42 points. I actually thought that this would be the game where that 30-point streak ended, but it didn't. So they have a chance to score 30 or more points um, for the rest of the season because they're playing against uh, Valley, Pine Bluff, and Tuskegee. No disrespect to any of those teams, but if they do what they've done offensively, they should be able to crack 30 points in all three of those games. And scoring 30 points in 12 games, it don't really mean anything, but that's still a good accomplishment. That shows your offense is consistent, and that's what this has been all season. Even in the loss, they had a good offensive outing. Our final game was a game that I watched the bulk of, and Grambling got a 31-23 victory over Bethune-Cookman. This game was kind of marred by a little brouhaha after halftime. We'll see what the SWAC does with that. I think they had 9 ejections. And this was a really entertaining game. I thought Grambling had a good game plan because they were playing Hayden Benoit, who was if you watch the game, you heard that he's 17 years old like a million times, but a 17-year-old walk-on, true freshman quarterback. He played a really solid game. I thought Bethune-Cookman would try to rattle him, but they seemed to be the team that was rattled early. Cam Ransom had a really rough start to this game. He had a fumble, and then he had another fumble that he fell on. They brought in Timmy McLean. He really, he kind of got things going a little bit, but they just, Grambling just hit a lot of big plays, and Bethune-Cookman just couldn't keep up, and they couldn't get over the hump when they needed to, as they did have opportunity late before Grambling scored a touchdown. I mean, before Grambling scored basically 10 points. No, excuse me, before Grambling scored a touchdown late in the fourth quarter to kind of put this game on ice. Bethune did get a late field goal, but it was all for naught. Theodore Caballero got the Tigers on the board first with a 23-yard field goal. That came after a Pine Bluff. That came after a BCU fumble on the first drive, and Grambling had a short field. Ended up going 8 yards on 4 plays and kicked the field goal, so they were 3-0. Then Andrew Frazier would get a 38-yard pass from Hayden Benoit after Bethune-Cookman went for it on 4th down and didn't get it. That was a 1-play, 38-yard drive. 10-0 early. At this point, it looked like Grambling was going to run away with it, but Bethune came back with 10 straight points. Juan Dominguez had a 30-yard field goal with 13:46 left in the second, and Timmy McLean had an 11-yard touchdown run with 9:09 left in the second. Game was tied at 10. Then Hayden Benoit hit Nashawn Dickerson for 51 yards to answer that score. Tigers went up 17-10. With 7:21 left in the first half. Malik Huggins would get a 61-yard pass from McLean to answer immediately on the first play of the next drive, 17-17. And looking like at this point, you're thinking, okay, Wildcats waking up now. The offense has hit a couple big plays. They're gonna go ahead and kind of make this thing happen and pull ahead and get going. But Hayden Benoit throws another touchdown pass, this time to Patrick Williams from 5 yards out. Extra point good, 24-17. A minute left in the first half. Juan Dominguez, 39-yard field goal for Bethune-Cookman, 24-20. That would be the halftime score. Score remained the same throughout the third quarter. 4:23 left in the game. Keith Jones caught an 8-yard pass from Benoit. Extra point good. Tigers at 31-20 at that point. Bethune would get a 42-yard field goal from Dominguez with 1:22 left in the game to make the score of 31-28. And that would basically be it. Grambling would get the ball at the BCU 49. They did attempt the onside kick. Grambling would get the ball and basically run the clock out and get a big victory. Like I said, this is one of those games that I honestly didn't, I didn't know which way to go with Grambling because of the quarterback situation. You don't really know. Um, but they called a good game plan for a young kid and kept him calm. And that's one thing the coaches said about him. They said he poised. He never seemed rattled. Of course, when your defense forces an early turnover and you get a short field, that helps settle you down. That gets the other team on their heels. And Bethune-Cookman just seemed like they were on their heels for most of the night. And Grambling was really good. They had a good running attack, which helped, but they weren't shy in the passing game. This wasn't one of those games where, the young guy just handed the ball off 80 times and they won. They were aggressive with the passing game. They went downfield. They ran trick plays. They ran their offense the same as they did if T-Set was out there. So that's a testament to your personnel. That's a testament to your coaching staff, and that's a testament to just trusting your process. And that's how you win games, even when you shorthanded. Both teams had 18 first downs. Grambling, great game on defense, especially against the run. 26 yards for Bethune-Cookman on 29 carries, zero 0.9 yard per carry. They did have a touchdown. 197 on the ground for Grambling, 41 carries, 4.8 yards per carry, no touchdowns. 297 through the air for the Wildcats, 24-29. One touchdown, no interceptions. Grambling, 220 through the air, 12 for 20, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. 323 total offense for the Wildcats, 58 plays, 5.6 yards per play. They had 3 fumbles, lost 2, 7 penalties for 57 yards. Grambling, 417 total offense, 61 plays, 6.8 yards per play. They had 1 fumble, didn't lose it. They had 10 penalties for 108 yards. That's the only downside of this game for Grambling. 4 punts for Bethune-Cookman for 44 yards, 6 punts for Grambling for 36.2 yards. Wildcats 27-minute, 27-second time possession. They were 2 of 11 on third down and 0 for 1 on fourth down. Again, that's gonna hurt you. They were 3 of 3 in the red zone. They had 1 sack, 2 of 2 on extra points, 3 of 3 on field goals. Grambling 33 time possession, 6 of 14 on third down. Didn't attempt a fourth down, 3 of 4 in the red zone. They had 4 sacks. They had 4 of 4 extra points and 1 of 1 on field goals. Wildcats were led by Timmy McClain, going 15 of 18, 224, 1 touchdown, no interception, 2 sacks. Cam Ransom was 9 of 11 for 73 yards, no touchdown, no interceptions. He was sacked 3 times. Hayden Benoit, like I said, a solid game for him, 12 of 20, 220 through the air, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 sack. Elijah Scott led Bethune-Cookman with 22 yards on 7 carries. Grambling defense just stuffed the run all game long. Andre Cruz led Grambling with 14 carries for 130 yards. Huggins had 6 for 122 and a touchdown for the Wildcats. Dickerson had the 1 catch for 59 yards and a touchdown. Also, Jones had 3 catches for 51 yards, and Frazier had 2 for 51 and a touchdown. Antoine Watts led the Wildcats with 8 tackles. Montravius Lloyd led the team with 1.5 tackles for loss. He also had a half a sack along with Cornelius Bass. And they also had an interception was by Johnny Harris. Grambling was led in tackles by Marcellus Johnson. He had 9. He also had a tackle for loss. Warren Robinson led the team with 1.5 tackle for loss, along with Isaac Washington. He had 1.5 tackle for loss. Bryce Cage and Quentin Talley and Marcellus Johnson each had a sack apiece to lead the defense. And like I said, this was a really good game. It really looked like Bethune couldn't get it going, and Grambling did a really good job of making their young quarterback comfortable and getting the job done. And you got to salute that. Grambling, 7 wins. Good possibility for a 9 big game next week for sure, but they do have a possibility to win 9 games and finish second in the division, unless something absolutely crazy happens. That's a good number, and this gives them their first winning season since 2019. So again, really good season for Grambling. Not necessarily a prettiest season, but you take them how you get them, and that's definitely where Grambling is right now. Looking at week 12, which is November 15th, this is the last week where all 12 teams are in action. We do have one non-conference game later in the season, but this is the last week where all 12 teams are in action. So we got Bethune-Cookman at Jackson State. That's a 12 p.m. kickoff. Grambling at Alcorn. That's a 2 p.m. kick. FAMU at Alabama A&M. That's also a 2 o'clock kick. Texas Southern at Southern, 2 o'clock kick. Pine Bluff at Prairie View, also 2 o'clock. And Bama State playing Valley in Mobile. That's a 4 o'clock kick. So pretty much all early games, which is basically the way it's going to be from here on out. That 4 o'clock kick is the latest the latest kick time to start a game for the rest of the season. Everything else is between 12 and 2:30. So there's a lot of early games there. So that's basically the schedule for week 12, and we'll close this out with a look at the standings, so we can kind of see where things shape up as we head into the final couple of weeks here. If you're looking for chaos, you gotta hope that it happens this week. If you're looking for, status quo, you gotta hope it happens this week. Gonna be an interesting week regardless. But here are the standings. Jackson State still sitting atop the East with a 5-1 record. They are 7-2 overall. Bama State also 5-1. Is this right? Yeah, they I think this is correct. Bama State 5-1, 7-2 overall. They still have Bethune-Cookman with a 4-1 record, but they are 4-2 with a 5-4 record. FAMU 3-2 with a 4-5 record. Alabama and them 1-5 with a 4-6 record. Valley 0-5 with a 1-8 record. So they had it kind of odd, and that kind of threw me off. But the East is basically simple. Jackson State, they went out, they win the division. Bama State, they need Jackson State to lose one game, and then they need to win out. Everything else after that is you need teams to lose 2 or 3 games, and this is not really worth getting into. If it's a tie, Jackson State wins the division anyway because they beat Bama State. So right now, Jackson State is basically in the driver's seat. A win and a Bama State loss gives them basically the division. So you're gonna keep your eyes on that. But Bama State got Pine Bluff and Valley, so they got opportunity to close out the season with a couple wins. And most likely the East is gonna finish with a 7-1 tie, which will give Jackson State the division. So they're pretty comfortable. You can't really lose, but they're in a comfortable spot right now. In the West, Prairie View 5-1, 7-3 overall. Grambling 3-7, 3-2. No, they didn't record that game in the standings. Grambling 4-2, 7-3 overall. Texas Southern is 3-3, 4-5 overall. Alcorn 3-3, 4-6 overall. Pine Bluff 2-4, 4-6 overall, and Southern is 0-6, 1-9 overall. So Prairie View, again, they are in the driver's seat. Grambling would need them to lose their last 2 games, and they would need to win their last 2 games and finish 6-2. They would need Prairie View to finish 5-3. Prairie View still got Pine Bluff and Valley, so they should win those games. Again, you don't want to count chickens for the hatch, but you should be in the driver's seat in those games. So a win next week gives Prairie View at least a share of the division. A Grambling loss and a Prairie View win gives them the division. So Panthers should win the West next week. And that's that. So that's pretty much where we stand. Again, it's still always room for chaos no matter what, because strange things can happen in the SWAC, but that's where we stand right now. Again, we'll be back next week. Week 12 preview on Wednesday, week 12 recap on Sunday. Hoping to get my basketball preview out on Monday. And that's that. So with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC, C. Wells, signing out, and I will catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.